Tonight, I am going to be covering perhaps the most obscure movie I am ever going to cover. I only know of this movie because I watched it when I was a really little kid. And I only remember bits and pieces, flashes of it. I'm lucky to have remembered the name of this movie. It's called The Bear. It came out in 1988. And apparently it is known enough that it's streaming, because I know it's not easy to stream. There's a lot of movies I feel should be streaming that aren't. And this movie is on Peacock. So it's known enough to be streaming. So I'm not saying it's the most obscure movie of all time. It's just it's hard for me to find information on this movie. In fact, I'll go through the information real fast. It was directed by okay, it's considered a French movie. I'm not going to be able to pronounce some of the names on here. Two names. Jean-Jacques. The director. He's a director. They're a director? I don't. And then written by Gérard Brach. And it's starring Bart the Bear, Youk the Bear, Tchéky Karyo, and Jack Wallace. I'm like, well, how do you pronounce this, Jack Wallace? It's a random English name. It is based on a novel called The Grizzly King from 1916 by James Oliver Curwood. It basically follows the story of a bear cub who is orphaned, and there are poachers after it. And yeah, there's the bear's mother is killed at the very beginning of the movie, and soon after stumbles upon another bear, which is played by Bart the Bear, who, in my research for this, I realized is pretty much every bear in every movie up until 2000. Because his filmography is really long. Let's see. Let me look at. I'm on the. Okay. Maybe not every movie. I was wrong. First movie was on 1981, The Wind Walker. He was the Cave Bear in Clan of the Cave Bear. Was in this movie. He was in White Fang, Giant Thunder Mountain, The Great Outdoors, On Deadly Ground, Legend of the Fall, 12 Monkeys, Walking Thunder, The Edge, which is a great movie. I might review that one someday. Meet the Deedles, and several shows too. The Life and Times of Grizzly Adams. 1977 to 78. So that one's even earlier than the first movie appearance. The Gambler, The Adventure Continues, Lost in the Barrens, The Young Raiders. That is in Spanish and I can't pronounce it. And wow, I don't know how they managed this. In 1998, he was a presenter at the 70th Academy Awards. I need to see that. But yeah, he passed away on May 10th, 2000. So, yeah. It wasn't listed on his filmography. It was selected filmography, which means it's incomplete. Which sucks because that means there's movies on there that I don't even know because it's not listed on there. So I will look them up on IMDb. It has to be on IMDb. Bart the Bear. There we go. Oh, yeah, even longer. There is one movie I thought was kind of funny. when I was doing the research. Oh wow, he was in Benji, but he was the bear in Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey, which I just reviewed a couple of weeks ago. Do you remember when I said, when I did that movie, I said, "Oh, I'm going to review another movie after this. That's another one I saw as a kid." So like these two movies were linked, but then the Queen died, and I did that movie. So yeah, that didn't work as planned. But yeah, the bear in Homeward Bound is the same bear from The Bear, but not the main bear actually, because there's another bear called Youk the Bear, like Youk the Bear. And looking up her IMDb, she doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. She has a oh no, where'd it go? She has an IMDb. Let's see, Youk the Bear, right there. She was in one movie. Can you guess which movie? You're right. The Incredibles. Okay, yeah, no. Obviously it was the bear. And it says that she passed away on December 21st, 2011. So we don't even get videos of her as an adult bear. Just a cub. Yeah. But then the two poachers, I'm just gonna call them by the character names. The Jack Wallace is Bill, and then the other one is Tom. And the one who plays Tom, I was looking at his filmography, and I thought this was kind of interesting, and I wanted to watch this movie now. 2 years after this movie came out, he plays in one called Vincent and Me. Basically, he played Vincent van Gogh, who is my favorite artist. Oh, that's on that movie. It says somebody appears as themselves at age 114, the oldest person to have ever appear in a motion picture, a fact that gained her a placing in the Guinness Book of World Records. She claimed to have met Vincent van Gogh when she was 12 or 13. He then starred in this movie about him. But yeah, this is probably the longest it's taken me to actually get into talking about the movie. Yeah, there's no easy way of saying this. The movie isn't really all that exciting. I don't know why. I saw it as a kid 100,000 million times. Okay, maybe not that much. I did see it a lot as a little kid. I think it's just like bear cub, yay, it's adorable, and it was adorable. But story-wise, it's practically a silent film because it's practically a nature film because you're just following this bear and this couple of bears, and every now and then you'll see what's going on with the poachers. They have their own little storyline going on, and yeah, they have some dialogue, but not much really happens in this movie. It's an hour and a half long, and it felt like a 3-hour movie. I'm not gonna lie. Eventually things do start to happen, like near the end. But like even like what ended up being the climax of the movie was it didn't even feel like a climax. It was just, I don't know. I mean, kind of. I don't. Depends on which part you consider to be the climax. There's the last. I mean, the closing of the storyline for the poachers But then there's still 10 minutes left of this movie. The humans are gone. There's no more dialogue for the next 10 minutes. And then the bear cub gets attacked by a bobcat. And that was kind of exciting. But, yeah. I did say in the last one that there were... I think I said in the last episode, there were moments in this movie that I remember that kind of gave me nightmares. And ironically, it turned out to be the bear's nightmares. So that, makes sense. But they didn't quite hold up. Seeing as, okay, I was born in 1988. This movie came out in 1988. Actually, what day did it come out? Watch it have come out on my birthday. Let's see. Let me see what day this came out. I am curious. October 19th, 1988. So, yeah. I don't know what that relevance that has to anything. I was gonna say I'm older than this movie, but it was released after I was born, but it was probably shot either before I was born or while I was being born. Either way. Yeah. The effects during the nightmare scenes, because, there ended up being more than one. I remember one nightmare. There are three. Well, technically two. There is a scene near the end where the bear cub comes across some mushrooms and essentially gets high on mushrooms and has a bad acid trip. It's not even like that freaky. It's basically just like a circle of colors that turn into a butterfly on its paw. It's just kind of like, oh, that's trippy. The two nightmares, though, the first one, it's actually closer to the beginning than I thought. It's like maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes into the film. Like I said, time is weird with this movie because even though it's an hour and a half long, it just kind of drags out. It feels a lot longer. But I know it's like the first nightmare was shortly after the film started, and there are frogs. I didn't remember what the nightmares were, but I did remember that there were nightmares in the movie. And now that I see the nightmares, now that I have seen the nightmares now, and I can remember them, yeah, the effects, it was a little creepy, but it didn't hold up. It was more silly than anything, mainly because the frogs are claymation. So the first nightmare didn't hold up. The second one was more elaborate. It was still claymation. Basically, like I said, the film starts off with the bear cub and its mother like getting some honey from some bees. It's this really simple scene, and then like the mother bear like hits the side of the hill trying to get the bees, and then there's a landslide and crushes her, and so you see it happen. And then later in the film, the bear cub has a nightmare about it, and you basically relive it. But instead of them simply replaying the clip, they recreated the scene in claymation. And this one, however, does work in this format because it told from the bear cub's perspective. Like, we saw what happened. The bear cub didn't quite understand what happens. So you see it like the way that the bear cub interpreted it, as the mother turned into the mountain. And it was still kind of creepy, like the visuals of it. And yeah, like that one did kind of freak me out a little. It's like, wow, okay, maybe this was the one that gave me nightmares, but I know the one I was thinking of was the frog one. The frog one is what gave me nightmares. And I think there's a shot from the second nightmare where the mother bear is like all red and the glowing eyes, and it's like to symbolize her dying, it just the eyes stopped glowing and became the same color as the rest of her, and I think that stuck with me too because like I vaguely remembered that. I didn't place it with this. I just assumed it was a nightmare I had as a kid, which it probably was. Now that I think about it, but yeah, like there are like moments like there are moments in this movie that things start to pick up. If they were to remake it, because it was based on a novel, like I said, I didn't read the novel. I actually didn't know there was a novel until I was researching for this. And considering that animals are a little harder to control, you can't really make them follow a novel. And again, this seemed more like a nature film, so I'm wondering how closely they follow the novel. I kind of want to look into it. They could probably remake this and do it better, maybe add narration, because there's times in here where I didn't really know what was going on. It just seemed like, oh, we're just following the bear. But then sometimes I was following along on the Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia page for this movie goes into more detail than the movie does. It like explains like what's going on, why the bear's doing this, and like how they're feeling. And I'm like, I shouldn't be reading. I shouldn't like get this information from the Wikipedia page. The movie should be telling me this, and it really didn't. I could hardly tell what was going on with the bear, like because like there were times where you can clearly tell it was scared, but like yeah, I think it. There's a lot of remakes going on, and I think that the only time you should really remake something is if you could bring something new to it. Like if it was a good idea that was done poorly, maybe do it again with a different crew, or maybe update the concept of a movie when you're remaking it. And this is one that I didn't even know until I mean, I'm pretty sure it said at the beginning. It does say at the beginning. Now that I think about it, growing up, of course, I didn't know about years and stuff. I actually remember exactly when I found out about years. It was when I was in kindergarten, and the teacher was like pointed to a bunch of numbers on the chalkboard and was like, repeat after me. And then she said the date, and it was like 1993, and I'm like, everyone's like, what is that? And she was like, it's the year. Here's the month, and here's the day, and here's the year. So like at the time I watched this movie, I had no concept of time in that sense. So I assumed all the way up until today that because it came out in 1988, it took place in 1988. But no, it took place in 1886, I think. 18 something. It was not a modern setting. But here's the thing about that, though. That wasn't necessary. Because there's really no scene in here that really requires modern technology. Because they're in British Columbia, like in the mountains in Canada, and if they had cell phones, they would have had a signal. Like if they were to remake this now, like take the original novel and readapt it, set it in the present time, you can keep the same story and keep it in the present. Because because to say the cell phones don't work out there. I mean, I know they have satellite phones, and like phones these days can like, with satellite technology and all that, they can reach the most remote whatever. But I think a modern remake of this would work. And like I said, maybe add some narration or more story, or like cut some stuff out, or I don't know, go ridiculous with it. It's listed as a family film, so like you could totally have the animals talk. It doesn't have to be like the Snow Buddy movies, like the Air Buddy movies, where like their mouths move. They could do like Homeward Bound, where like you just hear their thoughts. But anyway, uh, yeah, that's my review of The Bear. Uh, my lowest rating, I give this a 4 out of 10. It is on Peacock. I don't recommend watching it unless you want to see bears, because like I said, the little bear cub is adorable. Some of the visual, like some of the, like, because I think it was shot on location. I mean, of course, 88, they wouldn't have had CG. They couldn't have like digitally recreated that landscape. I'm pretty sure it was shot on location. But some of the visuals of the landscapes and stuff look amazing. So like, if you're into like nature documentaries, this is kind of like a nature documentary that's scripted when it comes to the poachers. Like there's this, they have their own story. They have their own story going on. If they weren't in the movie and it was just the bears, you could just say, oh, it's a nature documentary. It's simple as that, but it's not. There is something I was wanting to talk about. Because it was filmed in 1988, it was rated PG, I think. And that meant something different at the time. There's some graphic stuff on here, and stuff I don't think they could get away with now, at least not with PG. And a lot of it comes down to there's a lot of blood, and most of it is from the animals. And they actually made sure at the end to put this big sign in the credits, like, no animals were harmed in the making of this film. Everything was overseen by the Humane Society or whatever. And they like explained that like, bears get startled at loud noises, and so like the bears weren't on site when the guns were shot, and they took care to make sure that no animals were harmed, because there's a lot of animal hurtingness, if that's not a word. I don't know why I'm questioning that. But like the worst of it is there's a scene where the poachers basically sick their dogs on the big bear, the Bart the Bear, and one of the dogs is different from the others. Is like it's not a hunting dog. It's the Van Gogh actor. Tom, his dog, and you can tell that he really loves this dog, and he's like playing with it throughout like most of the film. And then you see that the bear is casually like taking out all these dogs that are jumping on it, and there's a couple of shots of like the bear throws the dog down the hill, and it actually shows. Obviously, it's like a dummy prop dog, not an actual dog, but like it hits a rock and it like bursts, and there's blood everywhere, and it's kind of graphic. But then there's a moment that I was like sitting there in shock, like no, where the poachers are walking past to kind of like check on the dogs after the bear runs off, and you hear like whining and whimpering, and it shows the poacher's dog that you can clearly tell that he loved her, and she was like, I don't know how they got this effect, but the dog was like very clearly mortally wounded, covered in blood, and it like did a close up of his face, and it looked sad, was crying while whining, and then it's like the poacher like turned away, and the other poacher basically put her out of her misery, and I'm like, this is not a family film, and so I don't recommend this movie, especially if you don't like stuff like that. I probably wouldn't have watched it had I known that scene was in there, which I should have known that scene was in there, because again, I grew up with this movie. You think that would have traumatized me, but no. It was the claymation frogs that traumatized me.